This is the fourth session of role-based access control. And in this session, we have to follow the concept of context in sense of different cluster. So now, my last session, I did the multi-context in a single kubeconfig file for multiple users for within the same cluster. But in this session, I will set up another Kubernetes cluster, and I will generate a new SSL certificate for a new user from that new cluster. And within a single file, I will embed the both different user of different clusters. So far I have a kubeconfig file that is ready, and that contains the two users for a single cluster. So I will embed the second cluster and its user into the same file. So you can see right now this contains only two users. Everything is ready. Okay, so far I have my cluster, from the first way of following. My cluster is up and running, and it contains two worker nodes, and everything is good. To set up a new cluster, I can set up same like what I did for this cluster, but I would like to add a new topic today for the how you can set up quickly some cluster, Kubernetes cluster for the testing and learning purpose only. So spinning up the virtual machine, it's a time-taking job, So Kubernetes, if you go to the Kubernetes documentation, here is a kind cluster. Kind is a tool that can help you to spin up the Kubernetes cluster within minutes. So the concept is basically, actually, I cannot find any documentation here. I will show you. This is the kind.6k8.io. This is a complete documentation website of this project kind. So what is this kind? Kind is a type of setup is a tool that can help you to set up the Kubernetes cluster in minutes. What the magic actually this kind tool is doing, you need it will spin up the containers, and it will use those containers as a worker node. So the concept is actually very, very difficult to understand sometimes. How a container can run inside a container. Our container will act as a worker node, as a control plane, and then we will do everything what we did on the virtual machine level. So I will explain you just to follow this documentation kind 6k8 SIO. So kind is a tool for running local Kubernetes clusters using Docker container. Okay, nodes Docker containers will work just like a nodes, and you don't need any virtual machine. And this kind was primarily designed for testing Kubernetes itself, but may be used for local development or CI. If you just want to test something on the Kubernetes cluster, you can spin this up. This will not go in the big production environment, but a small environment can also use this one. And what tool you need to install, everything is given here. You need to follow this documentation. My target is to just give you the idea how the kind is working, but to learn the kind in detail, it's a big topic. So you just need to follow this whole documentation, and you can get a lot of ideas. But today, what I will show you how to install a kind on your machine. So I spin up a separate virtual machine for this purpose in parallel to my Kubernetes cluster. And I just did an SSH to this machine. And how much RAM it contain, I don't know. Okay, it's 4 GB and it has 2 CPU and it has, I believe, enough storage. Okay, and let me check. Docker is installed. Any container is running? No. So Docker is ready. So what I need to do, I have to follow this link. Kind is a tool for running Kubernetes. So kind, I click on the kind and you can see the kind whole project on the GitHub is open. And this is a complete documentation. Everything is given there. And if you go to this README, so this is the documentation for the kind. And the same website you can also follow, but the new thing here is installation. That is not given on this website. So you can follow the installation method of kind on Linux, on Mac, on wherever you want to install on Windows. I will use Linux. And here for the Linux, they gave two type of processor, ARM processor and x86-64. So my processor is this one. So I just need to follow this command. And what this command will do, it will just pull down the kind binary file on my machine with the proper machine CPU architecture what I have. If I download this one, this will not work on my machine because my machine is not ARM based processor. This is for ARM. So I download the binary. I will show you ls-ntr. You can see the kind binary file is downloaded and size. Let me check. Yeah, it's about 6.3 megabyte. So what next I need to do, just I need to change the permission of this file because this is a binary. And you can see its permission is changed. It's now executable. And I need to put this file under the bin somewhere in my machine. And I just move it now. Kind has become a command on my machine. Okay, so this is a new command, and actually what the people, those who work on the Linux, the environment variable is path environment variable. So anywhere in this path environment variable, all the path set, you can put this binary file. But third-party binaries, mostly we put under USR local bin. So I put here, followed by the same documentation. Okay, that's good. Now, we need to set up a very basic Kubernetes cluster by using kind. Okay, my Docker is ready. So kind hyphen help. Sorry, hyphen help. You can see that the kind create. Okay, kind delete we can do, but a lot of options are available, but I will show you the very bare minimum. Kind create, again I will do hyphen help, and you can see what I can create. I can create clusters. Okay, and I will create a cluster. Again I did a hyphen help. I can give the name of the cluster. I can provide a config file. And if I just press enter here without any option, it will just create a cluster with the default name. And default name of the cluster is kind. So let me show you just quickly how this cluster will work. So when I press enter, so it is spinning up the container, and the image it is using kindest node variant 1.30, whatever. So this is the image that contain all the required binaries to run a worker and control plane as a node. So it will set up a single node cluster, and you can see here, I will show you that it will show you that whatever component it is installing and setting up in the cluster. It will take about a minute. So first of all, it is trying to pull down the image. I believe I have this image, or every time it is trying to pull down the latest image. Okay, image is ready. Now it is preparing a node. So it will be a single node because I have not provided any additional information to create multi node cluster. And the name of the cluster is kind by default because I have not provided any name. So what it is doing, writing the configuration file, starting the control plane services within this container, and it will set up the CNI and all the required thing. Okay, so cluster is ready. Now, what the second thing it did actually, it also create a hidden directory in my home path, and it put the config file at this location. So this is the config file that will help me to connect with my cluster. So actually, whenever you will spin up a cluster, you can set up the multiple clusters. So all the cluster will go under this symbol file. But my target is to use this cluster for a new user creation, and that user will go in my existing kubeconfig file that I already had from another cluster. So and if we are not using the kubeconfig as an environment variable, you can put your kubeconfig file under this location too. This is also a way you can direct your kubectl command to get the information of your to connect with your cluster. So so kubectl I already had on this machine. So you can see a single control plane machine is ready, and it is working as a control plane, and it is in ready state. So now if I do look into kubectl get pod-n system, so you can see all the components are running. It has its own network, CNI, kind net. It is not using VivNet or Calico. So the thing is our cluster is up and running. But, and if I show you the Docker PS, you can see a single container is ready, and that container on this local host IP, you can hit to this port to reach to API. So I can only reach to this API server that is running inside this cluster only via this server. We can also create, let me delete this cluster quickly, and I will show you how we can create a cluster with the multiple worker node, and how we can modify this thing, because I want to hit my API server from my Windows machine. So since this configuration is this port forwarding done on this container is not enough to reach to my API server. So for that reason, command line will not work. I need to create a config file for the kind clusters, whatever I want to set up. And in that file, I will define that the 000 IP, mean all the IP on this host machine will be able to reach to this port. And then from my Windows machine, I will hit this virtual machine to reach to this API server. So kubectl kind uh, list cluster. I think this is the command kind get cluster. Yeah, so I have a cluster named kind. So let me quickly delete this cluster. It will actually delete the you can see docker ps this container. Okay, and if I do a kubectl get node, it is giving me error, and let me check either it's clear. Let me just also delete this config file too. So it will generate a new config file for me next time. Okay, so now I want to create a cluster with the multiple worker node. I mean, so I have this file. I will explain you how this is working. Since I want to access this cluster from my Windows machine or from a remote network, so I need to set up, for example, development dot cluster, development cluster.ym. Okay, so here I will put this configuration. What this configuration is saying: kind cluster API variant. This is the kind commands manifest file, readable by kind command. And node, I want one control plane node, I want two worker node. I can put the labels under the child object for this worker node. This is my second worker node. I can put underneath this worker node more option. If you go to this documentation, you will find a lot of information. But my target is not to deep dive into this kind. You can do this by yourself. But my target is to just quickly set up a cluster and that I can reach from my remotely from my machine. So here what I am doing, I am setting up the control plane, and extra port mapping option I gave under the control plane 6443 port will open, and on the host machine map with port 3000. I can use any port, but I just use this port, and listen address 000 mean all the IP of this host machine should be able to listen on port this port, and TCP is the protocol. So how can now I can use this file to set up the cluster kind create cluster hyphen config, and also I will give the name of the cluster EVLOP development cluster. Development is good enough. The purpose of this cluster, anything, any name I can give. So by using this file, you can see it is now spinning up 3 containers, one for master, 2 for worker. And the image variant, it is pulling down from docker.io repo. It will take a while to set up the cluster. Okay, writing configuration. One of the worker node will work as a control plane. So it is joining the worker node with the worker node with the control plane. The same step it is doing on the backend. But I will not recommend to use this one because this will make a confusion. This is just for the testing purpose, or if you are professional in Kubernetes, then you should use this one. Otherwise, if you are a new learner, you should follow the method I guide you to installation of the Kubernetes in the virtual machine level. Okay, so now everything is ready. If I go under the kubeconfig, you can see this new config file is created. Okay, so with this way, I can now do kubectl get nodes, and my nodes are ready, and my nodes name are automatically set. If I do a docker ps, you can see 3 containers are running, and this port is pointing to 6443 inside my container. So, and inside that container, my API service is running. Okay, we are good. Now, I have a second up and running cluster. First one is this, and second one is this. Okay. Now my target is to create a user. So here I will create mkdir, for example. I will create a user, for example, Qasim SSL certs. Okay. And Qasim is on SSL cert directory. I will quickly follow the same documentation, whatever I use to create. And if you are confused with this one, you should follow my previous video of RBAC, then you will get the idea. So I am going to quickly spin up my SSL certificate for this user. And so it is creating this a certificate signing request, the template file it will create. And you can see certificate signing template is done. And I will put the signing request in the variable just to validate. I have this variable. Okay. This variable contain the certificate signing request information. Okay, now next thing is to generate the manifest that will create a resource certificate signing request inside my cluster. And this CS Asimesan CSR is created. And I have to apply kubectl apply -f and kubectl get CSR CS. So you can see this is in pending, but these are the certificates created by my cluster itself. So we don't need to look into these certificates. These are the cluster internal certificate management, but we are concerned about this one. So we will do the approval of this certificate. And just verify it is approved. Now we have to pull down the public certificate. and from this certificate, okay, this file. So now I have private key, I have public key, certificate sign request, and this YML I don't need. But the concerning thing is this certificate and key file. I have now. Now the thing is these the certificate signing authority. This file is not. These files are not available on my host machine. These are available under my this container. Which container? This is working as a control plane. So this control plane container contain all these files. So what kind I can use, Docker cp command I can use to copy all the data, pull down all this whole directory. Okay, here. So if I go under this container, I can see the same infrastructure, just like our worker node has. All the directory structure, everything is. So yes, done. So I just pull down the PKI directory from my master node that is working as a container. And it contains all the certificates, but my concern is only CA cert. Okay, because I have to use this certificate signing authority in my kubeconfig file. Okay, this is good. Now it's time to append my existing certificate file, kubeconfig file, with the new cluster information, with the new cluster user information. So right now, if I go to my Windows, and if you look my previous video, you can see I use this kubeconfig file, and I need to pull this file in my Linux machine, this machine, where I will make further changes in this file for this cluster. So if I from the desktop, I have just uploading this file. Okay, it's uploaded. I will copy from home same view training here, and sorry, I've copied it the wrong location. It should be under at this location. Okay, I copied to this location, and this file is actually, in previous video, we create this file for two user and with two context with this cluster connectivity. And it has its own certificate authority. Now, in this file, my target is to add a new cluster information. So this command will help me to embed the new cluster information in this file. So file name is okay, this is my file name, and This certificate at CA cert file is available at this location. I will use .pki. At this location, it is available. Current directory, and under pki and CA cert file is available. And here I will use the IP of this current server. So this server is 159.30, but the API port is not 6443. And the name of the cluster I will change, but is the API port, it's 30,000. If you remember, I did the port forwarding for 30,000 for to reach to API from this machine. And the name of the cluster I will give development cluster. Everything is good. When I will press enter, it will embed the new information in this file. So if I do a cat, you can see now what happened. This is one certificate authority for this server. This is for this server, and it's this its cluster name is development. This is the second certificate authority for this server, this API server, and its name is Kubernetes. So now it contains two certificate authorities, two cluster API URLs, but the context is still pointing to the only one certificate authority and API. So what I need to set credential for the user. So I have this user. I have to run this command. This command will update the information of certificates. Okay. This is my user, this is my private key, this is my public key, information is given, and set credential. Okay, so it will add the user Asim Hasan, but it will make a conflict with the existing user. So I need to create, I need to make one thing. Actually, this video training, it should not contain this portion. So I am going to delete this information only for Asim user, because the two user cannot be with the same name. Okay, now there is only one developer user that is pointing to this, and here I will also delete this this user context. Okay, now this file have only one user pointing to one cluster. Certificate authority for two cluster are set up. So why I did this, because I already have a user with Asim Hasan that was conflicting. So the username should be different across the clusters. Now I have to run this command. Provided by these certificate files, and name of this will only embed the new certificates. So if I show you this file now, this file now contains the Asim Hasan user 2, This is developer and this is Asim. But these certificates are not from the previous cluster. This from this cluster. These certificates are from the Asim Ihsan user, for the Asim Ihsan user from this cluster that I ran on kind cluster. Now, next thing is I just have to create a new context. In this file, user Asim Ihsan namespace, any namespace I can give, default namespace, and name of the cluster is developer, developer or development, I think. Development, I said. And Asim Ihsan context. Or I can just even leave it as it is, because it will show you all the information. This user is pointing to which cluster exactly. So cluster development namespace default username is this. Okay, everything is good. Just I need to check what was the name of my cluster, and I can see from development. Yes, it is. The name of the cluster is kind development. So I can directly modify the name. Sorry, PIM. Okay, so this is the name of the cluster, and this is the username, and current context is pointing to our same context. Okay, so now we have two contexts. Certificates are good. Certificate authority are good. Context is good. So now the last option we don't need to perform. Now I will download this file. I will download this file to on my one more thing I want to verify that this file contains this information. Yes, for the development it's good. Just I need to pull down this file cp. This file I already have. It will ask me to overwrite. Yes, I want to replace. And this file is replaced. Let me just quickly open a new CMD from my Windows machine. And here, echo, just verify kubeconfig file is pointing to the right file, and kubectl get no config view. So you can see this time it contains this cluster and this cluster. Both are pointing to different IPs. And one more thing, I just want to quick verify either this Docker. Yes, this port 30,000 is right. Yes, pointing to this IP. So just for the testing, I will just do a telnet to 192.168.159.30 on 30,000. If this is responding me, yes, it's connected. It's mean I can reach from my Windows machine to this API server. Okay, everything is good. Everything is good. Let me now config get context. You can see I have two contexts. One context is pointing to this user is pointing to this cluster, and this context is pointing to this user, this cluster. Both have different namespaces. Okay, so this, let me do a kubectl get nodes, so it will reply me localhost why it is could not connect to should connect to this IP. Let me just make a context change. Get context, get context, use context. The first cluster I will jump into. So now config get context. Okay, kubectl get pods. Developer user don't have any access because with the developer user we have not assigned any role-based access control, but it is working. So with this way, we create a kubeconfig file that can connect. With this way, we can switch our context to different cluster, to different user, to make the connectivity with different clusters. So right now I have not set up any role-based access control. That's why we are getting these errors. So to set up the role-based access control, you can follow my previous videos where you will set up the role base for this user and for this user on these default namespaces or whatever namespaces you want to, and then they can query to those resources. So this was today's topic, and in our next session we have to follow the storage classes, the concept of storage classes.